Good afternoon, everyone. I, wel- I welcome you all to this session of FFPI. It looks like FFPI has come to Bangalore again. That is the feeling I get. So we meet online, a virtual meeting once this time because of the corona and the situation in town. I think I would like to just say a small prayer. I just pray in my mind. We all will pray in our mind for all those who have lost their lives, our frontline warriors, our colleagues, our friends who have lost their lives in this fight against corona. And also today, till today, they are going to fight. They are fighting against the corona. So a small prayer in my mind. All of us say a prayer and wish that those who have attained eternity, let them have peace and the others stay safe. With these words, I would like to say the season is changing. Along with the COVID, we are also hit by the monsoons. So what best topic can we have other than dermatology in monsoons, where we know that the skin rashes, everything is very common. It is my pleasant duty and I am privileged to introduce none other than our young, dynamic dermatologist, Dr. Govind Mittal. People in Bangalore, many of us know you, sir. But for the others, I would like to read a brief, not very brief though. He is a consultant dermatologist, a dermatosurgeon, hair transplant surgeon, and aesthetic dermatologist. He is the founder of Therapia Skin Hair and ENT Center at Baswangudi in Bangalore. He is a visiting consultant of Excel Care Hospital, Brindavan, Arion, and South City Hospital. He has done his MBBS from the prestigious Bangalore Medical College and Research Institute in Bangalore. He was a gold medalist. He is the outstanding student in MBBS. He did MD Dermatology, Venereology, and Leprosy from Christian Medical College, the well-renowned hospital in Vellore. His from Rajiv Dermatosurgery fellowship he has done from Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, Bangalore Medical College. He's also had a short course training in skin laser surgery from Thailand and from Lucknow Talwar Skin Institute. And his awards has a big list. I'm not going to read all of them, but he has been the best student in school, college, MBBS, and post-graduation too. He is the 73rd Annual American Academy of Dermatology. He was nominated to present a research paper. He is an expert in procedures like cryotherapy, electrosurgery, radiosurgery, needling, and the like, chemical peeling, in many other fields. He has teaching experience to his credit. He has taught undergraduate students as well as postgraduate students. He has many publications to his credit. He has also contributed towards a biomedical device towards the Army, which is helpful for the Army and also for Texas Instruments. His contributions towards authoring books and chapters cannot go without notice. He has given a number of talks, posters, papers, paper presentations at international and national conferences. Needless to say, he is a member of Indian Association of Dermatology, International Association of Dermatology, and variety of other associations. On a personal level, his interest is in organizing events, his leadership qualities. We are looking forward to something from that sometime in the future, and he likes music and dance. What more, we would like to join you sometime, sir, to see you music and dance.
Sure.
To talk on the dermatological problems in the monsoon season, I request Dr. Govind Mittal to go ahead. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Preeti, for such a kind, elaborate introduction. And yes, it has been a pleasant experience to be a part of the FPI and FFPI PAI group in order to give a guest lecture. Thank you so much for the invitation. I acknowledge you and the Federation of Family Physicians Association of India, Dr. Pragnesh, Dr. Anuradha Madam, the President and the Secretary. Thank you so much for inviting me. I also thank the IADVL and ITATSA for providing me some of the pictures and slides for the benefit of family physicians that I'll be presenting today. Rain. If I were rain that joins the sky and earth that otherwise never touch, could I join two hearts as well? This is indeed, one of my favorite seasons in the entire part of the year, one of the few favorite months in the entire part of the year. Everyone starts having, a sense of positivity, a sense of, well-being as soon as we start, seeing rains around us. So when Pragnesh sir gave me this topic, skin disorders in monsoon season, I actually did a PubMed search, and I was surprised that I could just find very few results. So I realized this talk is not about any kind of, article that I can, read out to the family physicians, but it's more about my experience in seeing cases in this season. So I did a little more search, and I found that yes, there were a lot of newspaper references to, skin infections and fungal infections in the season that we see. And then finally, with further research, I came across an article on Indian Journal of Pediatrics, which clearly says that skin conditions or skin diseases were the highest in the months of summer, that is March to June, and monsoon from July to September. So rainy season in India, to understand the disorders associated with the rainy season, we need to understand the rainy season itself. Now, rainy season in India is a little peculiar in comparison to the rainy season in other countries, especially in the West, where it usually rains in the winters. Whereas in India, rains come in the summer months. More than half of India has started receiving rainfall by summer solstice. And this is because of the peculiar geographical location of peninsular India, which allows us to get the southwest monsoon rains. No doubt to say, the minute it starts raining, we think of pakoras and chai, and it's quite a romantic weather with some boiled corn. But in India, we also get to see these kind of scenes where it's raining heavy, there is a lot of waterlogging, and people finding it very hard to travel, and there is knee-deep water. So this will help us to understand why certain conditions worsen in the monsoon season. So it is a constant wet weather, and there is an increased humidity. There are episodes, or there are reports of waterlogging, people getting wet often, drenched in rains, and lack of sunlight to dry the clothes. Also, it causes overcrowding, because people cannot spray spread out. Now, if it's summer, people are sleeping on their terraces and wide apart. But now we cannot do that in such when it is in the rainy season. So closeness among people has increased. There is increased contact. There is reopening of schools and colleges, and people are walking around with wet shoes, wet socks for a long time. And it is seen that in this time, almost 20% of the hospital and clinical visits could be related with respect to skin issues. Also, vector-borne diseases, fungal infections, parasitic diseases, and allergies are rise in this season. So that brings me to the first and the most major topic of discussion for today afternoon is fungal infection. Now, fungal infection is clearly the most common infection that worsens in these months. And as we all know, before the pandemic of corona started, India as a country is facing an epidemic of superficial fungal infections or dermatophyte infections like never before. There was a time when I was a medical student or a postgraduate student where a 2-week or a 3-week course of simple topical and antifungal could cure a dermatophyte infection. But now it is, we have to go much longer, and we'll discuss about this. So fungal infections can be superficial, deep, and systemic. The most common superficial infections that we are concerned here is the tinea or the dermatophyte infections, and we also have the pityriasis versicolor or the candidal infections. Now, to discuss the magnitude of problem with respect to tinea. Now, tinea is the superficial fungal infection that can infect the nails, the skin, as well as the hair. And dermatology clinics as well as family physicians clinics are flooded with patients with this complaint. And especially after the lockdown, we've seen a lot of cases, especially of tinea incognito. So frequency of chronic, recurrent, and difficult to treat infections are increasing, and there are multiple intrafamilial cases, and infections can be severe if not treated properly, causing distress and poor quality of life. Now, what are the challenges that we are facing with current tinea infections? There's poor compliance on the patient part, irrational use of antifungals. The biggest problem is the steroid antifungal combination use, antifungal resistance, of course, the cost of treatment, and burden on the public health is enormous because of this. So this is a slide to show you that how there was this family where all 3 generations from the same family had a chronic tinea infections. Now, before even COVID came in, and before, I would say that before doctors were called the frontline warriors, I would say that the family physicians are, in true sense, always been the frontline warriors. You are the first go-to doctors for any one of us, and therefore all of you as family physicians play a crucial role in the correct diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of tinea infection. It would not be wrong to say that dermatophyte as of today is a superbug. Yes, it is. Its proportions of infection is, literally of an epidemic standard, which is continuing for the last half a decade, I would say. So what are the various types of dermatophytic fungi that we come across? We have anthrophilic, zoophilic, and geophilic dermatophytes that belong to Trichophyton, Epidermophyton, and Microsporum genera. And almost more than 30 species have been identified that infect humans. However, the treatment aspect does not change much as far as the, depending on the immaterial of the species that infects the people. So these dermatophytes usually invade the stratum corneum of the epidermis, and they produce enzymes to digest the keratin and survive. This is one of the common reasons why we develop itching as well. Now, what are the triggers for dermatophytic infection? Excessive sweating, humid weather that can occur in hot monsoons, tight occlusive clothing, synthetic oil applications, then commuting in a hot, humid environment, excessive sports activities, defective barrier, people with cirrhosis, atopy, immunocompromised individual. Now, this can be, immunocompromised status can be either iatrogenic or a previously occurring immunocompromised status like in diabetes. Then wearing occlusive shoes, wearing wet shoes, monsoons again, sharing showers, shower towels, bathrooms, locker rooms, and certain occupations are predisposed to this problem. And also, peripheral vascular disease can increase the chances of this infection. It can occur in any age, and both sexes are equally affected. It is quite contagious, spreads through direct contact as well as through fomites, and often infects family members. The commonest symptom that patients comes to us with is severe itching, burning sensation, excoriations, as well as pigmentation. And this is often modified by over-the-counter creams. Now, tinea is called or labeled differently based on the area it is infecting. So we have tinea corporis, tinea facie, tinea barbae, tinea capitis, tinea crudis occurring between the legs, tinea manum for hands, tinea pedis affecting the feet, and tinea angum affecting the nail. Classical tinea lesions are itchy, circular, annular, sharply marginated erythematous lesions. They usually have a central clearing and peripheral scaling. Sometimes vesicles and pustules may be seen in inflammatory lesions, and as they grow, they can even become confluent. Just to run you through some of the pictures of the dermatophytic infections, we have tinea capitis, which could be non-inflammatory, or it could have an inflammatory scarring kind of swelling, which initially presents as a chorion and pus discharging lesion, which is often mistaken as a bacterial infection, but is actually an inflammatory chorion due to a dermatophyte infection. Tinea facie and barbae, Tinea cruris et corporis, Tinea pedis, onychomycosis, which can also involve the web spaces, Tinea manum. And these are photographs of some of my patients that I've been seeing in the last couple of months on online consultation. So I just wanted to put them here to let you all know that this is something that we can relatively with ease treat on teleconsultation or teledermatology as well. So this was a girl, a 7-year-old girl who actually came to me with chorion. We actually diagnosed her on photographs, but later she was a doctor's niece and she wanted to come down and meet me. And the other photo that you can see is of onychomycosis after a nail injury. This was a patient with fungal infection involving the feet, and you can see the next photo where the lesion is improving. So this is the progress that the patient has had with the treatment. Now these are pictures which are difficult to diagnose a tinea infection. This can occur because if the patient has not taken photo properly, or it is because of the partial treatment that the patient has used, which comes to tinea incognito. So tinea incognito is a tinea that has been modified by the use of steroids, and it no longer is typical in its appearance. Pruritus may be absent, the margins may or may not be raised, scaling would have been reduced, and annular pattern may be lost, as we saw in the last photographs. There may be sometimes papules, pustules, I even see plaques, and due to long-term use of steroids, we see atrophy, striate, telangiectasia, and rosacea-like appearance on the face. Now, it is very important to understand what do topical steroids do in tinea infections. These topical steroids suppress the fungus-induced local immunity, and then it causes only temporary resolution of inflammation with elevation of itching and redness, but it causes spread of the infection and the number of fungal hyphae continue to increase. So what happens is initially when you use them, it gives you a dramatic initial improvement and you feel very happy about it. You end up discontinuing the cream and there are multiple recurrences and the infection becomes more and more resistant. So these are some of the photographs of tinea incognito. Here, this was the medicine used. Tinea incognito with striae formation due to steroids. This is pseudo-imbricata application. Imbricata is a term in dermatology used for concentric circles caused by recurrent multiplication of the tinea infection. Now this is pseudo-imbricata due to the use of steroids, and you can even see the multiple acneiform eruption due to the use of steroids. This is irritant dermatitis and atrophy caused due to use of steroids. You can see the atrophy also. So these are the common presentations that you may come across and common complications that can happen because of the use of steroids. Now, when do you think that you should refer this patient to a dermatologist? Whenever you feel that the appearance is not very typical, or when you feel that this could not be just tinea, but one of the following differential diagnosis needs to be considered. Yes, it could be a contact irritant dermatitis that may be coexistent with tinea or may look like tinea. It can be a granuloma annular, which is a totally different entity and which will not respond to antifungals. And sometimes even tubercular leprosy can look like a tinea infection. Even psoriasis, skin tuberculosis can look, and certain advanced dermatological conditions like gyrate erythemas can also look like dermatophytosis. So clinical diagnosis is basically based on the classical appearance, and you can always take the specialist's opinion whenever you're in doubt. And best way to confirm your diagnosis is through a skin scrapings or scrapings from the hair or nail clippings, which can be examined under the KOH and can also be cultured. Now, coming to the treatment principles of a tinea infection, it's very important to clearly explain the patient about the predisposing factors. Now, if we are just giving, in current scenario, if we are just giving an antifungal to a patient, it's only less than half the treatment done, because there are a lot of factors revolving around this recurrent tinea infection. We have to explain people for the need for personal hygiene. I have a lot of patients who come to me who say that they're having bath only alternate days or once in 3 days, which obviously predisposes them to the fungal infection. So need for personal hygiene, proper clothing has to be emphasized. Ask them not to repeat any kind of clothes that they are wearing without washing. Correct selection of topical medication is important. Do not use ointments over the areas of friction or areas of greasiness that patient may not tolerate that. And also explain to the patient not to rub the ointments or creams into the groin folds. That can again cause frictional dermatitis, and patient may have irritations. Choose steroid combinations if you feel that itch is a major complaint, but my simplest request to each and one present here is don't use a steroid combination at all. If you are in doubt whether it is a fungal infection, then steroid is out of the picture. So also you need to explain to the patient that although there may be an initial relief of symptoms, the treatment should at least continue for 3 to 4 weeks. That is important. And if it is a nail infection, it's important to continue it for almost 3 to 6 months, depending on which nails are involved. There is no need for any kind of dietary restrictions, but it is important to make sure that other family members are also treated. So topical treatment is the first line of treatment that we use and can be used for disease localized to glabrous skin, can be used in special cases where the patient is pregnant or it's a child or has serious liver kidney issues, and should be applied for almost 3 to 6 weeks, twice daily, and more than 1 inch beyond the active margin of the lesion. So it has to be applied to a large area. We have a whole list of antifungals that can be used, and I'm sure you're familiar with that. So I call it the 1, 2, 3 rule, or the rule of 2. So apply it for at least 2 weeks more than the patient's symptoms. Apply it 2 centimeters beyond the active margin, and apply it 2 times daily. In pregnancy and in pregnancy, terbinafine is the preferred oral drug. It's a category B drug, whereas in lactation, if we have to use an oral drug, fluconazole can be used. In children, terbinafine and hydroconazole both are reported to be safe and effective, and even pulse therapies can be given. Strictly avoid combination creams. No steroids are required ever. You have to understand as azole antifungals itself have significant anti-inflammatory action. Advise the patient that there may be mild increase in itching for one or 2 days or 2 or 3 days, and that should not be the reason for them to stop antifungals or for you to prescribe any kind of steroid-based combinations. Now, soaps and powders need not always be prescribed. Now, they become heavy for the patient. The prescription becomes heavy for the patient. He has to buy more number of things, and he may compromise on buying the tablet or the cream itself. So therefore, soaps and powders do not have a great role in as far as cure of infection is concerned. Another problem with combo creams here, as the slide says, is these combination creams contain drugs like ornidazole and ofloxacin, which have absolutely no role in either reducing an eczema or reducing a fungal infection. So why they're even there in the combination cream, we do not know. So it's best to avoid them. So say a big no to combination creams for tinea management. We have a whole lot of them, and if I can do one change with this presentation for any one of you or even one family physician out there, is to convince you from not prescribing any combination based ointment. Systemic antifungals, yes, it is the need of the hour where we see patients with extensive lesions. Topical therapy has failed. There's some immunosuppressive condition underlying. Nail infections definitely need. And for patients with extensive, who are very hairy individuals, or if the infection is in all hair-bearing areas, you definitely need to go for a systemic antifungal. However, you have to understand that this can have drug interactions, and LFT, RFT monitoring may be required. And it also increases the cost of treatment. The standard antifungals used are fluconazole, terbinafine, itraconazole, and griseofulvin. My current favorite would obviously be itraconazole for the kind of improvements that it has been giving, and especially in patients who have been previously treated with steroids. The standard dosages that were prescribed in textbooks previously may be inadequate for the current scenario. And as previously said, it is very, very important to talk about general measures to the patient. Not to forget foot and nail care. Ask them not to wear occlusive footwear, avoid walking barefoot, trim nails regularly, use separate towels for the feet, and avoid sharing, nail cutters and clippers with others. So the main role of family practitioners here is proper counseling, treating of patients without steroid-based creams, providing patient information leaflets, and have posters in their clinics. Now, this is a child, 12-year-old child, who just walked into my clinic yesterday. You can imagine that he's 12 years old. He's in the pubertal age group. He had been prescribed Propigenta NF, that is a clobetasol-based preparation, which he has used for 5 months and did not venture out. You can see these patches, which are the tinea infection, but you can see extensive striae, and he's almost Cushingoid due to long-term use of clobetasol. Now that brings me to an end to the large topic of tinea. We can discuss it further during the question and answer session. Coming to other skin conditions during monsoons. Now, pityriasis versicolor is an other fungal infection. However, it is caused by a relatively harmless fungus, I would say, like Malassezia, which is an yeast form of fungus. It can occur in adults and as well as children, especially in our country and in tropical countries. Children are also affected, and it is very commonly seen in the months of May to October, and it can involve the neck, chest, face, and upper limbs. The whole name versicolor suggests that it can look different. It has versatile color. It can be hypopigmented, it can be hyperpigmented. And whenever you scrape it and check it on the microscope, you may see a spaghetti meatball appearance or the banana and grape appearance, which is there. Those of you who cannot do a KOH can always do a Woods lamp examination where it may have a yellowish orange hue. Treatment, no steroids again. Basic topical antifungals like clotrimazole or ketoconazole solutions or shampoo do the job. All you have to ask the patient is take a few drops of ketoconazole based shampoo, mix it with water, leave it on the affected areas, leave it on for half an hour before they go for bath, and do this daily for a period of 1 week, and that should be sufficient to kill the fungus. They can use it the same thing as a shampoo to reduce the excess colonies of Malassezia they may be having in their scalp, to reduce the Malassezia count on their body, and they may also use it once in a month or once in 15 days to prevent recurrences. Also, in patients with very extensive tinea, you can give oral fluconazole, 400 mg stat can be given, or 200 mg once in a week for 2 weeks can also be given. Now, coming to the next condition called P-Dris dermatitis or blister beetle dermatitis. Now, this is a very interesting dermatitis. I'm not sure if family physicians would have heard of it or come across this condition, but it is very peculiar to this season usually. Lesions are very red to vesicular, erythematous to vesicular to start off with, and they usually turn necrotic. It looks very dangerous, in some of the patients, and it starts giving a cellulitis like picture or a charred appearance, and they have bizarre appearances. It can look like a zoster, it can have linear. You need to see 3-4 P-Dris dermatitis or blister beetle dermatitis to make a diagnosis of this infection. You can even form kissing ulcers, and most commonly patients say that they got this when they woke up in the morning. It was not there the previous night, and some of them even remember an insect having affected them, or they would have seen an insect biting them. So that's the blister beetle photograph that I got on the internet. Most commonly in our country, these will be the beetles that are moving around on the fruit trees and mango trees, and the flowering trees that can flower in late summers and early monsoons, and it can leave these kind of bizarre lesions. This is a kissing lesion. This is a bizarre lesion on the face. lesions on the forearm and on the chest. Now, the treatment is very, very simple. All you need to do is ask them to give cold compresses or dilute potassium permanganate solution compresses. Now, this is a condition where I give a combination of mild topical steroid with the antibiotic. Antihistamines can be given. And if you feel that there's a cellulitis-like picture that can occur on day 3 or day 4, and if it is not reducing with the above, you can consider giving oral antibiotics. Another condition that many of you might have commonly seen is pityriasis rosea. Now, although in the temperate countries, this condition peaks in the months of winter, in tropical countries such as India, we see an increase in the months of March to August. In fact, this year I have seen a higher number of pityriasis rosea than I see on any given year. And a point of caution here is that COVID-19 infection has been reported to have one of the skin manifestations of COVID-19 infection could be a pityriasis rosea-like rash. So it is worth probably understanding what this rash may look like. We have not been able to identify the infective agent. That could be possibly an infective agent that causes this condition. It could be, there are several studies which implicate HHV 6 or 7 for this. It is quite a self-limiting problem and usually does not recur again and again in individuals. Usually it starts off with this Herald patch. I'm sorry, I could not fish out my photographs in time to put it up, so I took this from one of the textbooks. So you can see it starts off with a Herald patch, which is quite big, and then comes on to the rest of the body. It looks very scary. Patients are quite scared and quite disturbed, and it is quite itchy also. But all the patient needs in this kind of a scenario is lots and lots of reassurance. Whether you go to a doctor or not, cold, cough, fever takes 5 to 7 days to settle down. The same way, whether you go to a dermatologist or not, pityriasis rosea can take anything from 2 to 6 weeks to resolve. So that is the usual course of pityriasis rosea. Classically, it has the Christmas tree appearance on the back and the chest. Now, why is it important to diagnose pityriasis rosea? Because it has, grave differential diagnosis, especially secondary syphilis. I had this experience of seeing a patient in his early 40s last year, and I had diagnosed him with pityriasis rosea. Just while he was leaving the clinic, I just asked him if he had any kind of high-risk exposure with any other individual apart from his wife, and then he confessed to it. And then when I tested him for VDRL, I found it to be positive. So it was actually a secondary syphilis rash, which looked like pityriasis rosea. So it is worth testing a patient or asking for specific history. Even guttate psoriasis can look like pityriasis rosea. You need to counsel a patient a lot and make them understand that this is not as harmful as it looks. Symptomatic treatment with topical steroids, antihistamines is fine. There is some role of oral roxithromycin, or if the patient is coming to you very early, high dose oral acyclovir can also help abort the pityriasis rosea attack. Another common condition seen in hot monsoons, especially in North India, would be the prickly heat or malaria rubra. Now, this is usually characterized by reddish, small vesicular eruption. It's usually an abnormal sweating response. It is not infective, even if you see pustules. No antibiotics are needed in this condition. All you need to do is reassure the patient, ask him to have a more breathy, ventilated, cool atmosphere around him. Cold sponges would help. Calamine lotion would help. Do not give any kind of occlusive topicals like with liquid paraffin. And this is quite a common condition, especially even seen in infants or toddlers. So all you need to do is reassure these parents who come with this kind of a presentation. Another common skin condition seen in monsoons, worsening in monsoon, is seborrheic dermatitis. Seborrheic dermatitis classically worsens in the winters, but I've seen a good number of patients who come to me with worsening of seborrheic dermatitis in the months of June, July. Now, commonly there's a history of getting drenched in rain, so there is a lot of moisture in the scalp, and this allows the fungi to form more colonies and give rise to an inflammatory response. Now, seborrheic dermatitis may not happen in every individual. Okay, that's my half an hour alarm. I think I have another 10 to 15 minutes. I should wrap up before that. So, yeah. So, where was I? Yeah, so everyone who has a fungal colonization of Malassezia or yeast-like organisms in the scalp may not end up with seborrheic dermatitis. It's more to do with one's own tendency in the presence of these certain environmental conditions. The most common form of seborrheic dermatitis is Seborrhea capitis, which often involves the scalp, and it presents with an itchy scalp, greasy scales, or even dry scales in some individuals. It can be associated with redness behind the ears as well. The simplest form of treatment is to use a ketoconazole-based shampoo, preferably with zinc pyridine. A lot of over-the-counter anti-dandruff shampoos have zinc pyridine. Even selenium sulfide based shampoos do a great job, only that they are not very preferable to a lot of patients because of the smell they have. There are newer formulations of selenium sulfide shampoo which have had more improved formulations and more acceptable to the patients. If a patient is not responding to any of these, you can consider a cyclopyroxalulamine based shampoo. There are a couple of brands that have started producing it, and that also works well in reducing the seborrheic dermatitis of the scalp. Now, when it's infected the face, you may want to give a course of oral antifungals. A short course weekly for fluconazole or itraconazole would help. And very mild topical steroids. Mild, I mean class 1. Class 1, I mean clobetasone or desonide. You know, these would help in reducing the inflammation, and not for a duration of more than 7 to 10 days. That's all. So that will help in reducing the irritation on the face. Sometimes the seborrheic dermatitis-like picture can also be caused by Demodex infestation. Now, Demodex is a parasite. Now, this can also give a picture of seborrheic dermatitis, and single dose of oral ivermectin may help. Topical ivermectin based creams may also help both Demodex infestation as well as seborrheic dermatitis. So many other eczemas of varying etiologies, including atopic eczema, discoid or nummular eczema, other endogenous eczemas, then contact eczemas, airborne eczemas can increase in frequency during the rainy season. This can occur because of the changing weather and changing humidity from time to time in these months. Especially of importance are certain airborne contact dermatitis that can worsen due to increase in certain kind of flowering plants in one's particular area, which one may be allergic to, and cause this kind of airborne contact dermatitis with dissemination. This photo that I have put over here, this is a photo of a patient with an eczema on the feet. This was a teleconsultation with one of my colleagues in Calcutta. Thanks to the teleconsultation guidelines that have allowed us to have cross-state and cross-city and inter-India discussions amongst doctors, amongst patients, and to reach out people far and wide. So this was a kid who had actually a combination of atopic dermatitis and tinea. He had a dermatophytic infection that was confirmed with a KOH preparation, as well as he had these groin and other folds involved atopic dermatitis kind of a picture. This was in the early monsoons in the first week of June or late May. Urticaria, very interesting. Now, this urticaria is a condition that very well haunts each one of us all throughout the year. And in my experience, I've seen that some patients commonly report that they started having urticarial episodes after they got drenched in rain. Now, this could be due to some kind of a flu or a viral infection they could have picked up in this weather, or after a gastrointestinal upset. As we know that waterborne infections can be more after the monsoons. So this is the time that people, schools open, people like to go and eat all those masala puris and chaats on the roads, and all those masalas you want to eat when it's raining and stuff like that. So which could be triggering an infection and triggering an urticaria. Sometimes it could even be acid rays that could be causing a skin reaction and urticarial appearance. And some patients have an aquagenic or cold urticaria that can worsen in the monsoon seasons. Now, few patients, the minute the summers stop, their relief that they had during summers in case of psoriasis goes away. So a lot of patients start having psoriasis, which is worsening in their monsoons, and the peaks during the winters. And obviously this could be due to the change in the temperature as well as the UV index in the atmosphere. Also, it could be because of the humidity. There could be staph infections, strep throat, and folliculitis that can worsen the psoriasis existing in a patient, in a previously diagnosed patient. This is the dermatoscopy image of a psoriatic lesion. So nowadays we don't do a lot of skin biopsies unless it is absolutely indicated. We have a tool called dermatoscope that allows us to magnify a skin lesion and understand its features. And probably if it has classical features on dermatoscopy, we can avoid a skin biopsy. Now, I put up this picture classically is to show you that how a guttate psoriasis patient can have Christmas tree-like appearance and a pityriasis rosea-like presentation. This is actually a patient with psoriasis. He's a known case of psoriasis, had it for a good 7-8 years, but he came with this exacerbation of guttate lesions. So one of the conditions I have not discussed, so I just realized that this is not a forum where I can expect answers on a chat. So I thought I'd put this as a quiz question to find out from the viewers what this condition could potentially be. This is an interesting photo I got from one of my gynecology colleagues yesterday. She messaged me and sent me this picture asking me what this could be. This was a patient postnatal day 7, and she started developing these kind of pustules in the thigh area. Now, this is a patient with candidiasis. Candidiasis occurring in the groin area because in a postnatal woman, she's always having a discharge and wearing, sanitary pads, and the area is wet, and infestation with the candida can occur. These classical pustules are the satellite pustules that can occur with candidal infection. Now, this is very early photo. If you see this on day 3 or day 4 after the infection, you will see an area of maceration and the number of pustules would have reduced. You can always take a pustule and put it on a glass slide, the fluid from the pustule, put it on a glass slide and send it for, gram staining, and you will see yeast-like organisms. So this is Candida. Infections, I've seen a lot of them in monsoons, especially after people are getting wet in rain and sitting in with wet clothes for a long time because they're not been able to reach home in time, and they end up having Candida in their groins very acutely. Just after getting wet, the next day or the 2 days after that, they come with Candida infections. For completion, other infections I've seen worsen in monsoon are pediculosis. Yes, children go back to school, they contract lice from their friends, and they present with pediculosis. Polymorphic light eruption or PMLE, especially when it is cloudy, the UV index can still be high, and patients who are photosensitive can come back with polymorphic light eruptions or sun allergy and present to us. And I found another article, interestingly, cutaneous leishmaniasis also increases due to the replication of sandflies in summers, especially in the areas of Western Ghats. Sorry, not summers, in monsoons, in the Western Ghats. So with this, I'd like to give some health tips for the rainy season. Always avoid getting wet, eat healthy food, keep your surroundings clean, maintain good personal hygiene, all of which I'm sure you advise your patients regularly. And with this, with lots of hope in the current scenario, in the current COVID picture, I would like to end my with a message of hope. I would like to end this presentation. Invite you to my center whenever any of you visit Bangalore, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Govind. This was an excellent presentation. You took us from fungal infections to leishmaniasis to all the treatment and all the lovely pictures, because dermatology, that is one important point. We need to see the lesions to diagnose. I request Dr. Anuradha to coordinate if there are any questions.
Thank you, Preeti. We don't seem to see any questions in the chat box, but that was definitely an elaborate presentation with touching all the manifestations that you noticed during a monsoon season. I would like you to give us information about how to treat pediculosis in our practice.
Pediculosis very easily treated with 1% permethrin rinse. 1% permethrin rinse is available and can be applied on the scalp once in a week for 3 to 4 weeks. Apply on the scalp, leave it for 15 to 20 minutes, wash it off. To be done by all family members. If one person in the family has pediculosis, that means everyone has pediculosis. Also, the same night, make sure you're next day morning, you're changing the bedspreads and the pillow covers, so that any kind of lice or nits, if they are there, you don't reinfest or yourself with them to cause repeated infections. Also, very important to ask friends also to be treated if they have similar symptoms, close contacts of the patient. So 1% permethrin rinse is sufficient.
I have a question for you. You said fungal infections do not use steroids whatsoever.
Yes.
Okay, but there are some times when we are not very clear or not sure that it is just fungal. When the diagnosis is still pending and we are doubtful, what we tend to do is mix both and use so that it gets.
It is not
day-to-day practice. Yeah.
Day-to-day practice. If you have the slightest doubt,
okay.
I feel in the era of open teleconsultation, I would say we need to keep our egos apart and take a photograph, tell the patient that, okay, you would want to discuss this with a specialist and come to a diagnosis. Okay. And if a specialist friend of yours can help you with the diagnosis, well and good, point number one. Secondly, you don't need to be a dermatologist to advise a KOH mount. So if a fungal infection needs to be confirmed, it just costs about 100 to 150 rupees in some of the labs. Please identify a lab around you which will do a KOH scraping. Nowadays, I don't even have to waste time in taking the scraping and sending it to the lab. I just send the patient to the lab. The technician there knows that he has to take the scraping. I just have to mark the area where I want the scraping to be taken, and they do a KOH mount. However, if you want to take the scraping, you can just take preferably, they say kraft paper or black paper, but even if you don't have black paper, take a white paper. Take these scrapings with a sterile blade from the edge of the lesion and fold it in the paper, double fold it, and send it to the lab. Let it be checked on KOH. This is if you have a doubt. If you feel that any of these facilities are not available, if you're not able to do a KOH or send it to any doctor or send the pictures to any doctor, do a trial of plain antifungal. So if it is a fungal infection, it will respond to at least 5, 10, 15, 20, 30% within the next 1 week to 2 weeks. Ask the patient to come back after a week, after 10 days. Okay.
Fine.
And then if there is absolutely no response, then that means you're not dealing with a fungal infection, you're dealing with a non-fungal infection, irritant dermatitis or something else, where you can possibly think of a steroid. Giving a combination with a steroid is of absolutely no use. Secondly, after betamethasone was taken into price drug control, all the combinations have clobetasol as the steroid, which is a class 5-6 super potent to super potent steroid, which, to tell you very honestly, in my dermatological practice of the last 7 to 10 years, I have not prescribed in a more than 200 patients clobetasol alone, even for dermatological conditions. So that is how clobetasol.
Thank you. That was clear.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any other?
We don't see anything in the link also.
In connection to Preeti's question,
Yes.
Patient already came with a taken steroid. In fungal infection, patient already came with taken steroid.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So how to manage a case who has come with a fungal infection who has used the steroid? Okay. So first of all, when a patient comes in this situation, I reprimand the patient properly. I tell them that not to self-medicate, not to buy OTC creams, not to buy OTC medication. I even go to the extent of telling them that we will file a case against the chemist who gave you this cream, because these creams are not healthy. These creams should not have been purchased by you and used in sensitive areas like groins, which are very close to your reproductive organs. So once you tell them these things, the patient has some sense and some fear in him. Point number one. Point number two, I tell the patient, and not only tell the patient, it is known fact that if once treated with steroids, the duration of treatment that you have to give is increased. If a treatment-naive patient comes, a patient with a fresh treatment without having used steroids comes to you, you can treat a fungal infection within 3 to 4 weeks, completely cure. Whereas a patient who has applied steroid definitely needs treatment for 6 to 8 weeks, because the body's defenses are compromised. Chance of fungal resistance would have increased in such cases. So whether steroid applied, whether steroid not applied, patient has to be treated with plain antifungals. Tell them that they may have, because of the withdrawal of steroid, they may have some kind of something happened to the screen.
We can see you.
Okay, sis.
We can see you.
Yeah. So they may have some amount of burning sensation, some amount of itching, redness for a couple of days because they've stopped using the steroid. Ensure the patient, reassure the patient, give him some extra antihistamines for the first week, and you can use azole-based topical antifungals initially, like luliconazole, like miconazole, like oxyconazole. Now these have good anti-inflammatory properties, so they will reduce the inflammatory aspect as well. Tell the patient, if you use a steroid, you will never get cured of this fungal infection. That is for sure. So although it may be a short-term distressful situation for the patient, but it is a long-term cure that we are achieving.
That's a common problem. This is also a common problem.
Sorry,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Reoccurrence is also a common problem.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree with you.
And one of the commonest reasons for that is lack of hygiene measures, lack of general measures followed by the patient, and past history of steroids.
There seem to be
Can we
no
wait
more
for
questions.
some more time? Any interaction?
I have
No,
been
ma'am.
checking with the
There is no
technical
need to
support.
wait,
There
ma'am.
are no questions. Yeah, there are no questions. Before Dr. Anuradha can give the vote of thanks, I have a small announcement for all of you. This is a series of CME's webinars being conducted by FFPI, and the next one will be next Thursday. So every Thursday, 4 to 5, will be a webinar by FFPI. Thanks to Dr. Bajpai and Dr. Janak. And the next topic is gastrointestinal problems in monsoon. And the speaker is Dr. Atul Shende, consultant from MGM Medical College, Indore. So this is the next topic. And if Dr. Janak would like to say a few words, and after that, Dr. Anuradha will propose the vote of thanks. Dr. Janak, would you like to say something?
It was a really good talk and wonderful talk from Dr. Govind. This is a program which will be continuing again with CIPLA. Again with CIPLA also we may start. And also GSK program also we are going to start with recently now. So thank you, sir. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Yeah. So I would like to propose vote of thanks. To start with, I would like to thank Dr. Bajpai, President, Federation of Family Physician Association of India, and Dr. Janak, Honorary Secretary from Mumbai, and the managing team for giving Preeti and me, that is President and Secretary of Family Physician Association.
One second, before we close, we should appreciate Dr. Pragnesh Vachrajani for his very good effort and for what he is doing at present with the webinars, what we are conducting.
Okay. I've included him. Yes.
He is in the list.
He is in the list. Thank Dr. Bajpai, Dr. Janak, Dr. Pragnesh, Dr. Sana, Dr. Shanya for taking through this session very well. And we are happy that you're conducting this session every Thursday and you're also welcoming us. So from Bangalore, we'll all be participating in your sessions. And I also thank CIPLA, the Cresta division, for organizing this webinar for us. And also I thank each and everyone who has participated in session. And before I end, I would like to definitely give the take-home messages that we have got from Dr. Govind. He has been an excellent popular speaker in Bangalore, and we had the occasion to listen to him. He had a lot of take-home tips and messages for us. And what 3 take-home messages I have gathered from his talk, of course, I knew about it, but for all of us, no combination of ointments, no, never, never. Any rep who approaches, the moment they say combination, I say full stop. Give me single ointment. Madam, 2, 3 ointments. Yes, it can be 1, 2 or 3, but I always want single ointment. So he has very well specifically highlighted to us that combination of ointments should not be used at any point of time. And if by default, if I use an ointment, I do not prescribe it. I just give temporarily for a day or 2 and no oral steroids also. I'm very, I have that principle. And if at all somebody has to prescribe oral steroid, it should be either the dermatologist or the physician when it is not in our hands. The second take-home message what Dr. Govind gave us was soaps and powders are not required. But the reason that he has put forth is that they have a tendency to promote drug resistance. So that is another take-home message for all of us. And the last but not the least, when all of us are in doubt, we still have an answer for a dermatological condition, particularly when women refuse to go to a male doctor, when you don't have a lady dermatologist with you in your panel to refer immediately. They are not ready to go to another doctor. They say, no, we would like you only to treat us. So the answer that Dr. Govind has given us is take a scraping and say, do the KOH mount yourself or send it to the lab. Come to a conclusion. Otherwise, as Dr. Govind rightly put it, we have telemedicine to our rescue. So we can utilize that and make sure that we don't miss out on our diagnosis. And thanks once again, a big thank you, Dr. Govind. You did highlight all the dermatological conditions that we all come across frequently in our practice. And you didn't, bore us by giving too many details of all the conditions. So thank you very much. And last but not the least, thanks again, Sir Dr. Bajpai and Dr. Janak. And as Dr. Janak put it, Dr. Pragnesh, the person behind organizing this excellent webinar, and the other organizing team. Thank you. Have a, safe bag going home. Have a great evening. Thank you, one and all.
Dr. Pragnesh, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Even till late in the night, you've been coordinating everything and sending everything. And Dr. Bajpai and Janak, thank you for giving FPA Bangalore an opportunity to conduct the webinar. Thank you very much from our side.
Welcome. You're welcome.
It is our pleasure.
Yeah.
And Dr. Govind, of course, as usual, excellent talk. I hope you all enjoyed it.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So
Thank you,
we
everyone.
meet
Bye.
again next Thursday. We meet
Yeah.
again next Thursday.
Yes. Bye. Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.